What is up, everyone? Today I'm making another video. I know I've been spitting them out all week, but today we're tackling the age-old question: is water wet? I know. Take that in. It's been debated over and over. People say, well, water is wet, water is not wet. Personally, I am on the water is not wet, but I can honestly see how people think it could be wet. Because scientifically, we could say both either or. But that's why I'm here today. I'm going to be showing you the scientific ways of, and, literal and technical terms of is water wet. So before we tackle into this thing, we need to figure out what is water and what is wet. Well, water, is H2O, the liquid substance, but let's actually tackle what wet means, because wet is different from, it's covered in water. Wet means covered or saturated with water or another liquid, okay? So, yeah, it doesn't have to be water, but let's say we have, oil on top of water. The water is technically wet, because you have, you have water covered in oil, which is wet, because oil can make something wet. So, in that scenario, water would be wet. So water could be wet, but we were, asking ourselves, is water wet in general? So it's every day, water in a cup, everything, spilled on the ground. Is that wet? So we actually need to think of it a little more further. So covered in saturated with water or another liquid. A scenario you would be in. She followed, slipping on the wet rock. So the rock is wet with water. This is getting confusing. But, when you spill something on the ground is wet, right? We all know, if it rains, the ground is wet. Your car is wet. You are wet. But is water itself wet? So if we think about water as water molecules on something, we could technically say that water molecules are on water molecules inside the water. So technically, in that term, water would be wet. But you also have to think that wetness is the result of water being on something, you know? Because this is where I come in with we don't say fire's burnt, because something on fire can be burnt. Something that has water on it can be wet. But we don't call water wet, and we don't call fire burnt, because you need to have fire on something else. It's a two thing. You can't have one without the other. One variable is just water, okay? You just have water. And the second is something to spill it on. So let's say you spill it on a table. The table is now wet, or the napkin is now wet, okay? Let's say we have fire, and we have, some wood, okay? Fire is fire, wood is wood. You light wood on fire, it's getting burnt now. So do you see how I'm coming from? So, when you really come down to it, it could be either or. I'm gonna still side with the water is not wet, but if you want to go the other way, leave it down in the comments. Tell me how you feel about this. This is Michael Nation. Peace out, y'all.